Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Dr. Claude Anderson said that every time you see some black celebrity, they're having some sort of illicit relationship with a ball. They're either bouncing a ball, catching a ball, hitting a ball, or having a ball. And nothing personifies this kind of buck-dancing behavior more than the $40 million slaves. I already told you about Magic Johnson, who decided that he was going to go on the campaign stump for Kamala Harris, though he couldn't tell anyone why. Talk about sending the wrong messenger. Who the world actually idolizes Magic Johnson? Especially after the 1980s, his life went off the skids. Yeah, he may have gotten a lot of money for himself as a businessman, but that is literally the only thing that any black person would actually like about this guy. Remember a couple of days ago when I did a briefing about what makes for a weak black man? And all the people out there who say, well, if he's got money, if a black man's got money, then that means you ought to be listening to him. Okay, Magic Johnson is allegedly close to being a billionaire, at least on paper. So does that mean that we should all be listening to Magic Johnson when it comes to deciding how we should vote? Or when it comes to the raising of black children? Maybe we should take our cues from him too, right? Because he's got money. Black men, especially black fathers, or black men who want to have children, they don't want to emulate Magic Johnson's family values. He's got exactly the kind of Addams family dysfunction that nobody aspires to. So why put him out there in front of the cameras? Precisely because they know exactly how screwed up this guy is. And yet there will still be black people, especially black men, not just black baby boomers, but black men across the spectrum, who are actually going to look at this guy and make excuses with themselves about why they ought to go ahead and give him some kind of credibility, though they can't tell you why. Though as reprehensible as Magic Johnson stumping for Kamala Harris was, he wasn't the first NBA player to be doing this mess. Before Johnson, there was Steph Curry.
Obviously, endorsing Kamala is important for me, for my family, especially women's rights and thinking about, what's at stake with this election and understanding, we need to be in a position where women have the right to choose what's right for them. And that's at the top of the list for me. I have amazing women in my life who've, been a huge inspiration to me. But knowing Kamala and having been around her, and I understand she's qualified for this job. She's, I think, representing what it means to be a great leader and being a decent human being in terms of representing our country the right way. So it's an easy choice for me.
He said he supports women's right to choose. To choose what? Caffeine or decaffeinated? To choose white over colored? What the world was he supporting a right to choose? Abortion. That's what he did. He went on and on about he supports the right to choose abortion. This guy sounds schizophrenic as hell. You have this high yellow Negro sitting here, and he's talking about his reason for endorsing this Asian candidate, and the reason he gives is abortion. Now, is Steph Curry or his wife thinking about having an abortion? The man has at least one young child. And what kind of message does it send for him to be saying that his decision to vote for somebody is based solely on whether they'll make it easier to kill one's own baby? And from there, he went on this rambling rant about how he has so many inspirational women in his life. I guess he feels like the women in his life need to be able to get abortions anytime they choose. Because the black women in his life are so inspirational, he thinks they shouldn't have children. But of course, this little display was not meant to be convincing black people of anything. What it was meant to do was a thinly veiled attempt to push the white media narrative that black people don't care about cash reparations. That's not important to us. Economic empowerment, that's not what's important to black people either. Punishing the police for harming us, that's not important. Abortion is. Because apparently all black people do is sit around fornicating with each other and getting pregnant. Apparently that's all we do, right? As Steph Curry tells it. In Steph Curry's world, as soon as a black woman gets pregnant, the first thing on her mind is, how do I get rid of this pregnancy? I guess he feels that black people don't have any real issues that concern us, because all the black people are sitting around just getting each other knocked up, no doubt with no plans for how they're going to support their children, right? What every black person wants to get rid of their baby before it's even born. Now, is that a message from the black community, or is this more of the white left's hand-picked suck-ups who are telling us what their white paymasters want us to think we should be focusing on? They're trying to dictate to us what our interests are, and they've been trying this for a long time. The white media gave the game away from the very beginning. They would be carpet bombing us with propaganda, falsely claiming that they talk to this or that black person, and the black person they talk to is always some Democrat plant, some Democrat shill, some career DNC operative, and they would of course be putting out the fiction that black people are only concerned about things like abortion or immigration. What a surprise. It's never cash reparations. It's never anything financial for us. Instead, the white media has some sock puppet Negro who says the number one issue for black folks is abortion, or what they call voting rights, which always means to allow illegal aliens to be able to vote. When you ask what does voting rights mean, it's like, well, everyone should be able to vote. Well, black folks can already vote now. Well, the Republicans want limitations. Look, if black people want to vote, we can always get to that ballot box if we're properly motivated. That's their problem. They want us to vote without getting anything. And now you got a critical mass of black people who are making it clear that our ballot has demands attached. And unless those demands are met, the ballot stays at home. Simple as that. So that's why we got these NBA players out here saying go and vote for abortion. What the hell would we look like voting for that? They would put out the fraudulent talking points incessantly, just constantly saying it over and over that abortion is the number one issue for black people. When Steph Curry was talking about how he has so many great black women in his family, what do you think that was about? It was the Democrats' pathetic last-ditch attempt to see if they could get black women to do an about-face. Oh, they saw how black women are starting to break away from them. And they're like, well, let's go ahead and do some phony ego stroking and see if that works. And we'll have Steph Curry do it. Because I'm sure that the white DNC leadership tells themselves that every black woman in America sits around fantasizing about Steph Curry. That's what they tell themselves. So go ahead and have him out there selling the soap. You don't need anything for yourself. You don't need cash reparations. You don't need economic empowerment. You don't need to be protected from the thugs in blue. What you need is to have more abortions. That's what you need. And he had the nerve to say that this was important for his family. I guess nobody ever explained to Steph Curry where babies come from. This was what they were doing at the DNC convention. Nothing about what black people would get other than abortions. That's why he threw in that stuff about all the amazing women in his family. I can't think of any black women, even the shea butter bootlicks, who are saying that abortion is the number one issue for them, or even in the top 20. But when these Democrats say girl power, that's what they mean, terminating your pregnancy. Oh, no. Terminating your pregnancy isn't self-genocide. That's self-empowerment. George Orwell would be proud of this doublespeak. This asinine attempt to have what the white media thinks are the cool kids vouch for Kamala Harris, it's not working. Because black people are not looking up to these guys. How many of you even remember that Steph Curry gave a speech at the DNC convention before I reminded you just now? How many of you even remembered that? See, it's not having the kind of mileage that they need. It's not the game changer they need it to be. A lot of people wonder why it is that I have such open contempt for these Hollywood Negroes. You wonder why every time I talk about sports, I can't help but tell you that I don't watch sports and that you shouldn't either, and that I don't think highly of these Negroes in these sports leagues. Why do you think I do that? And why do you think the same thing goes for these singers and entertainers? Why do I have such an all-encompassing contempt for them? Because they're tools of white supremacy. They certainly wouldn't be getting the money that they get from these white corporations if they thought that they were a threat. And the worst part is black people in particular are overrepresented when it comes to people who watch entertainers and definitely when it comes to watching sports programming. This is dangerous. I shouldn't need to say that, but I do. A lot of people have major problems whenever I tell you that black people shouldn't be so enamored with these sports broadcasts, TV shows, and movies. And you can tell the Negroes who lurk around here, who are the main ones who live their lives watching these TV shows and sports shows and idolizing these athletes. I hope that after the Magic Johnson endorsement of Kamala Harris, my point is a little bit better understood. White power cherry picks these Negroes, makes them prominent, builds them up by giving them lots of flattering and laudatory media coverage if they're obedient. But if they don't toe the line, they get demonized and vilified. These so-called stars and athletes are nothing more than inventions of the white media, and nothing they say comes from their mouths. Some white DNC strategist was the one who wrote that mess for Steph Curry to say. And the same as some DNC staffer who put those words in Magic Johnson's mouth, because if they didn't want Steph Curry to mention abortion, he wouldn't have. And if they told Magic Johnson don't mention black men, he wouldn't have done that either. But to these black celebrities, it's not at all about being serious. It's about trying to be relevant. That's the reason why I highlighted for you the debacle that took place with Janet Jackson and that so-called PR person she had working for her. This guy's sitting here putting out statements that are the exact opposite of what she said. This happens all the time. These people used to having Negroes on strings, having these black celebrities as puppets who obey. So you got Janet Jackson, she spoke for herself and stood up on her own 2 feet. But meanwhile, Steph Curry and Magic Johnson continue to slither on their bellies. The reason Magic Johnson can wag his finger at black men despite being one is for the same reason Steph Curry sees no contradiction in saying that he has so many amazing black women in his family, while ignoring that while Kamala Harris was a prosecutor in California, she was targeting black women and locking them up. These celebrity Negroes feel like they've escaped being black. That's what it is. That's why Magic Johnson talked about black men in the third person, as if he himself wasn't a black man, because in his mind, he's not. He's escaped blackness. He escaped it a long time ago. He made it out. And now, as he sees it as an honorary member of the oppressor class, he now is going to talk about black men the same way that his white liberal friends do. Talk about black men as sheep who need to be led, for their own good, of course. You'd have to be suicidal to be cheering for this. On the one hand, Steph Curry wants black women to be happy to vote for Kamala because of abortions, which they already have access to, by the way. And Magic Johnson wants black men to get happy to vote for Kamala for no reason at all. Bill Moyer said that elections are about who gets what. So what are black voters getting? Nothing. These clowns, they're the enemies of the black community. Some white political power broker or media figure tells them to endorse this or that candidate or this or that issue, and they'll do it. But if black people tell them they got to take a stand on something, they'll tell us that they're apolitical. They don't believe in taking stances, or Republicans buy shoes too. Johnson and Curry are separated by at least one generation, but both of them are two prime examples of world championship suckers. The question that some of you may be tempted to ask is, who the hell's side are these chumps on? But the real question would be, whose side are they not on? Well, the answer to that is obvious. They're not on our side. So, since they're playing for the other team, Team White Supremacy, let's get serious about making sure they lose. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Charles Hairston, LB, Samuel Divers, Darren Nooks, and Roxanne Allen. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.